Hello, everybody. This is the Warlock Kadash,
And I'm SyloKat.
and welcome to our second retrospective, where SyloKat and I played Dark Souls 2,
Oh, that game.
otherwise
That
known
game.
as "You Died," but in worse ways than the first one.
Let's get it started. So, Dark Souls 2, I wouldn't really call it a sequel to the first game. I really wouldn't call it a prequel to the third game. It was kind of its own little game.
It was.
I was apprehensive to start it to begin with, and for good reason. The reviews for it, the majority of the people who told me about it were like, dude, it's a bad game.
Yeah.
And honestly, I got into it. I had some bad experiences doing the streaming with it. With the first night, I had some trolls in my chat, and they were backseating me like crazy, and it just went all over the place from there. And then it was just downhill. What was your first impressions of the game?
Well, originally I was gonna skip it because I heard all the same stuff that you did,
Right,
but
right.
but then it was gifted to me from one of my nicer viewers who I don't know if he's nice anymore. Uh, and I
If, was
it's one
it
of those,
was it out of being nice, or was it a curse?
he's a nice guy. I think I think he just wanted to see if I would enjoy it or not. And
Did you?
you, I have mixed feelings. So like
Yeah.
yeah, of course, when someone gifts me a game, I'm going to play it because they spent the $40 on it, or
Oh
20 if it was
yeah,
on
yeah.
sale.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The start of the game for me was different. So I'm trying to remember even how it started. I was trying to figure things out. Oh yeah, the things betwixt. That's where you begin. Uh,
Yeah.
I got a little bit lost right off the bat. That's like the main echo of this Dark Souls more than other Dark Souls is that I got a lot more lost in this one.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So the pathway, well, I don't know. The pathway in the first one was semi-clear to an extent. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like there were so many different ways you could go. When I remember watching you play one, and you were headed down to like New Londo at the beginning of the game and going and grinding souls down there, and you didn't have to. It was like that was not where you were supposed to be at that point in the game.
Yeah,
This one, it kind of pushed you in a certain direction, but it was, to me, it was actually more linear as far as where you got to go. However, there were other things with it, the other factors that kind of were downers to me. Like the
yeah.
beginning part, I didn't have an issue in things betwixt. I didn't have an issue getting to Majula, or Mahuela, or whatever it was called.
I think
Uh,
most people say Majula.
Majula is what I called it. And I'm sure somebody's like, you got the lore all wrong, man. You pronounced it wrong.
Dark Souls lore. Who cares?
Brr. There's a lot of really cool lore in the first game and in the third game, and
I
I'm
I
pretty sure the second one has good lore too.
I,
I
I,
don't
I will
care.
say for everyone out there, I say all these things in jest. I just I usually like hidden stories and things, but Dark Souls is a bit too hidden.
Yes, I want my story kind of presented up to me up front, not in a whole bunch of items that I have to read
Yeah,
or dialogue that I hear once that I'm going to forget, or whatever. It becomes very difficult to follow the story through that way.
yeah.
So, you got lost in your first part. I didn't really get lost, but I did have a lot of challenges with it. And somebody directed me. So at the very beginning of the game, there's this troll, and he holds a ring, and it's not a bad ring. It like increases your poise or something like that. And the guys were like, "Oh, you got to go back there and kill this troll." And so I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure, okay." And let's just say it can be done at the beginning of the game. It is very difficult at the very beginning of the game for a melee character. I don't know if you did it or if you came back and did it later.
See, here's the thing about Dark Souls 2 is my memory of it is spotty because when it wasn't fun, it was really not fun,
Right.
and at the beginning of it is definitely a blur. I don't remember this troll, but I know I beat it because I got that same ring that you're talking about. I'm gonna
Hmm.
guess that I didn't have as much trouble with it because I was a sorcerer again, and
Yes.
the whole sorcerer OP thing, and This time out, but for the record, everyone, my build was pure sorcerer. Like all my points went into intellect, attunement, and the health one, vitality.
Yeah, and so my build for it was a strength build. I actually got that challenge from my audience to do something different. So strength pumped into vitality and in not really endurance, whatever the one that increases your equipment load, so I could carry the heaviest equipment. So vigor, I think maybe something like that.
No, I think vigor was health, and maybe it's vitality that did.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. But yeah, so I went that route with a little bit of attunement so that I could use a pyromancy glove rather than a bow and arrow for ranged attacks. So there was a little bit there. Okay, so dive right into this. Your experience as a spellcaster, what was different from the first one? What did you like? What did you not like? What was just the same?
Well, in the first one, I did a strength intellect build, so because I found it handy to be able to. I know I've as much as I like the spells, I still found it handy to have a sword and be able to swing at things.
Very true.
So this time I had to be purely ranged the entire time, and that things got a little bit difficult because swinging a sword can be a bit faster than casting a spell.
Yes, and there were some. Granted, the first one was really, really well done. If you were ranged battle in the first game, you had it made. It was very well put together. There were only a couple of bosses. This one, I think it was about the same. If you were ranged, you did well, but the ones where you had to be melee or you had to get up close because they were going to get up and close to you were a lot more difficult. So, the breaking point. When was your breaking point in this game? Do you even remember?
The year was 19/11/12. It was a drizzly Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I had just woken up with a fresh pot of coffee to play Dark Souls 2. All right, so all serious time.
So it's like, oh, so when you started the game, gotcha.
So, I had a couple of. It was a downward spiral from the beginning. So things went first. I got lost. It didn't last for too long, but I got lost. Then I made it to Bajula. I was able to find eventually, of all the paths there, I was able to find my way to the forest area.
Yep.
And I got lost again in the forest area because there's a lot of different paths there. And that's when I took my first break from the game. I stopped playing for about a week.
I remember that.
And I came back to it and finally found the path. I found the pursuer, and continued onward. I don't remember where that led me next, but I do remember I don't remember the name of it, but it was that city that was like high up on the spires in the ocean underneath, with the big guys with the big swords and
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but the Heidi's Tower of Flame.
Yes, that's it.
That guy.
And that was place. I got there. That's when I started encountering the second round of bullshit because it was all very difficult there, especially for a spellcaster, because those guys have very high defense.
Yep.
And I remember it was like, I got to the dragon. His fire clipped through the wall because Dark Souls is really loves to
walls don't matter.
Yeah, walls don't matter walls matter for you. They don't matter for the enemies. And that's when I lost my first huge bout of souls. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a long break from this one. That was my breaking point. That was my first breaking point. I had two during the experience.
So, okay, so like the first night. Probably. First night I was pretty frustrated with it because I didn't feel like I made any progress because I got hung up for an hour trying to do stuff the chat was telling me to do. After that, it was probably a little bit further into the game. I can't remember the name of the place. Oh, no, I remember now. The gutter. The gutter was like my point where I was done with the game. When I got to that point, I was like, I'm out. No more. This is a trash game for me. I'm not enjoying the game anymore. And it was so bad. Like the experience was so negative for me, and I just wanted to trudge through it because my personal mantra, I will never let a game defeat me. So I was going to beat this game. One way or another, I was going to beat this game. and it took its toll. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, the gutter definitely sucked, but not as bad for me because I was, I don't remember how I got through it, but I remember there was something about it that didn't strike me as hard as you, and I'm thinking that's because I was also a spellcaster. But
I don't know. I remember watching you go through there,
no,
but I was helping you through some of that stuff. Like,
you helped me through a little bit of it, but I do remember I chose not to explore all of the gutter.
that's true.
Why I got through it. That's why I got through it with less difficulty.
Yeah, I showed you where the bonfire was at the end next to the boss. The boss was
Yeah.
actually really challenging, and that was probably the part that I didn't like. As a melee character, the boss is strongly reliant on dodging and stuff. You really can't use your shields or whatever to block. You have to do good dodges.
I don't remember the boss.
The Rotten. The big fluffy piece of poo made of people and skulls.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was after like the poison room, right?
Yes. I believe that was the gutter. That's what I remember as the gutter anyway. It may not have there was Blighttown version 2.0.
Yeah, the name changed when you got the name of the area changed when you got there, but it was basically still the gutter.
Yeah. That whatever the name of that place was, that was what did it in for me.
Yeah.
Because it was no matter what you did, you almost invariably got hit with poison somewhere because they got these statues that sit there and spit poison at you.
The most unfair layout ever.
Yeah, and I mean, you can destroy the statues. You can take your time through there and you can make your way through, but it just took forever.
And they know you're not going to take your time. It's like, oh, the player is going to take 2 hours killing 500 statues as well as the enemies there, or are they going to just plow through it and press their luck? Of course, we're all going to press through it.
Yeah, because we got tired of destroying statues. I mean, truly. But okay, so you brought up a good point. So in any Dark Souls games, you get to a point where you end up losing all your souls, and it sucks. One of the new mechanics that was introduced in this game, and I want to talk to two of the mechanics that I found to be both a blessing and a curse. Well, three mechanics. The first one is enemies. After you killed an enemy a certain number of times, I think it was like 20, something like that.
12 times.
Oh, was it 12? Okay, I didn't actually count, but once you killed them a certain amount of times, they quit respawning. That was a blessing and a curse. So for you and I, who, like, if we're running low or we feel like we're not progressing right, we'll sit there and farm souls and come back and, level up and do what we need to do to move on. This made that limited. Like, you couldn't sit there and just farm souls unless you beefed up the bonfire intensity in the area, in which case now you got harder enemies. Kind of defeated the purpose.
My experience with that was more of a blessing, less of a curse. Okay, so after I came back to the game after that first break, the breaking point, I should say, I got through all of Hylia's tower by literally killing everybody so many times that they stopped coming back.
Sounds right.
I got really strong from that, and I think that was more of a blessing for me. I don't know how you did I don't know like how you put your points about the way you did, but I spammed intellect until it was capped. I spammed health until it was capped. Same thing with attunement, and then that's where any points would go anywhere else. So I made sure I was as powerful as I possibly could before I went any further.
And see, I didn't experience that until like later on, and like you said, it was kind of a blessing because you kept on dying in the same spot, and eventually you kill all these enemies and you can get a little bit further. So it was a good thing, but to me it was a mixed bag because in that same aspect, if you're using that methodology to sit there and level up, that made it a lot more difficult because now you got a limited supply of enemies basically before increasing the difficulty. So
and I want to,
go ahead.
I want to say so there were when I was doing that, I cleared out 2 entire areas. The first one was Hilday's Tower. The second one was the Wharf. That's where I got most of my
Yeah, that one.
levels, and there was a fuck ton of enemies there. That took the most amount of time. I killed literally everything there until they just stopped coming out, except for the enemies on the ship, because I didn't want to go on there because I hadn't gone on there on stream and I didn't want to see what happened yet. And the very fact that was a thing that happened tells me that you were intended to do it that way, because like there was that final dragon. Like if you want what is the quote unquote good ending of Dark Souls, you have to fight the big dragon in the big golden tower, and you have to go through a huge gauntlet of like golden knight enemies.
You didn't have to. You didn't have to. This is one of the things I left out. There was always one big giant guy who was blocking your way. If you defeat that guy, all the other knights that are around you stayed by themselves. Like they stayed put. They did not come and attack you.
I'm going to grab the bottom of my camera right now, like I'm grabbing your neck, and you just chose now to tell me this?
Oh, come on, Dark Souls, man. I had to enjoy a little bit of it. Hey, I didn't know it either until like somebody in chat was like, because you ran past him to begin with. I was like, okay, we got a big guy here. We're gonna meet him and destroy him and move on to the next. Because as a melee character, all I have to do is dodge. I don't have to worry about using up all my spells. There was one guy at the very, very top that was very difficult to kill. But past him, that was it. Once you got past all that, all the other little knights or whatever in the armors, they left you alone.
I think I had maybe this mentality because that was like the one area of Dark Souls 2 that I had spoiled for me before I went in. Because one of my streamer friends, when I caught his game, he was there, and that's what he was doing. He was running through the whole thing, and I thought, oh great, this area must suck. And this whole area, that area was where I had my second and final breaking point, because this is when I said, I don't care about the good ending. And also I got invaded twice by the same person.
Yep. I remember that. So like that was one of the pluses. So you played on PC, I played on PlayStation 4. I actually turned the network off on my PlayStation 4 so I couldn't get invaded, because the invaders in that game, I did not start out that way. I started out trying to play it pure and just play it like Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, like I am, it was, if I get invaded, I get invaded. It's a test of skill. Chances are I'm going to lose because I'm going against somebody who's experienced. We'll just let that one go. I did it, and I kept on getting some bullshit deaths. Plus, PvP is way different in that game versus the first one and the third one, I guess, because you can get invaded even if you're hollowed.
Yeah,
bullshit.
That's where it got terrible for me. Like, the moment I got invaded by the same person twice, and the second time, like, I'm convinced he was watching my stream, or she, for all I know, like, because they killed me at the big golden palace where the dragon was, and then they followed me to the end game, and got naked, put on just had a poison dagger with a torch. Yep,
I remember that.
They were fucking with me the whole time. I remember that first time I had a chance. I used that tree, the seed of the giants, to have the enemies attack him too.
Yeah,
it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, I remember that. So let's talk about the second mechanic that was introduced that was a little bit different from the first game, and that's hollowing. So every time you died, your life meter got shorter. Until eventually, unless you had a special ring, it hit like a 50% whatever your max was.
Yeah, that aesthetic didn't bother me as much because it's all you need is the humanity to bring it back,
right?
And from there you just go back from max health to little by little going back down again. It didn't bother me as much, but I was really focusing on increasing my health. Because sorcerers have that ring that cuts their health in half but boosts their sorceries.
Right. Well, and so for me, it bothered me really early on in the game. Like, it pissed me off. I'm like, why am I getting, half health And then once you find the ring of binding or whatever it is, and it cuts it down so you only lose like a quarter of your max health or something like that. It wasn't quite so bad, but like at the beginning when you've got almost no health to begin with, that curse is horrid. Because it's like, okay, as is, it's only 3 hits to kill me. Now it's like 1.
As is, it's only 3 hits to kill you. Isn't that the entire case for the entirety of Dark Souls?
Probably. Now that I think about it.
At least for bosses.
Probably. Yeah, at least for the bosses. Well, I don't know. You could survive some, but it depends on what you were wearing and what your stats were going into it. If you pumped into vitality and or vigor and you jumped your health up pretty high, which I didn't actually. Now that I think about it, I didn't pump into vigor. I pumped into vitality and strength and endurance. So that was not a thing for me. Okay, that's the second mechanic that was introduced. The third, adaptability.
Really, that's where you're gonna throw in?
Yes, that's exactly where I'm gonna go, because that was an unknown stat. You would go on it and you would hover over it and it would just say, how well you adapt to stuff. And you're like, okay, well, I see it raises a couple of resistances over here.
It seemed like the equivalent of resistance from the first game.
And the resistance in the first game was junk. Yeah, it was like, okay, why are you putting stuff into this stat? It's really a meaningless stat. So yeah, you didn't do anything, but it had like one hidden property to it that you probably didn't notice, and that was agility. And that affected so many things behind the scenes that you had no clue about. It affected how fast you drank your Estus flask. It affected how fast you rolled. It affected how many iframes, invincibility frames, for those who don't know, you got when you rolled. It was like everything was tied into this key little stat that looked like it did nothing. When I found that out, that's about the point where I hated the game.
Yeah, around the end, when you told me about that, I started pouring points into adaptability, but by then it was like only mildly helpful for the final boss, which I killed in like 5 hits anyway.
Estus flask use was so slow.
Yeah, that's where adaptability really would have sold me, just considering because in the first game it was pretty much instant. The second game you drink the flask and it slowly charges.
Yeah, it's not an instant like it goes up. It is okay, you're healing, and it's like you heal for the 100 HP over 5 seconds. It's like, really?
Yeah.
This is what I have to deal with.
I got died. I got died.
You got died.
I got died more than enough times because I was too slow on the Estus flasks.
Yeah, and to me, that the Estus flasks, all of that was those were mechanics that were not fun. And I guess maybe that was a lot of it. That was a lot of what contributed to how I didn't enjoy the game, was the mechanics just did not feel like they worked.
Yeah.
Let's talk about bosses.
Well, hold on. There's a fourth minor key factor that this like the one key factor from Dark Souls 2 that carried on to the next game.
Okay.
Which was no longer leveling up at bonfires.
Oh yeah, you have to go back to a central keeper or something like that. I didn't actually find that it was a bother, but the fact that you could warp around really didn't mess with me too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a major thing, but I kind of like it. I mean, if lore doesn't matter as much to me in this game, but it makes more sense to be able to gain this power from a person as opposed to sitting at a bonfire and looking at a screen and I imagine from the first game, you literally have the screen pop up in front of your character and be like, so yeah, let's put points here, as opposed to having it bestowed upon you.
That's true.
By giving the souls. I like the it's a more pleasing visual aesthetic.
Well, the game started out with, once you got to Majula, the game started out with fast travel. Yeah. So that in itself was a plus. You didn't have that in the first game, so that's probably one reason why it wasn't a mechanic in the first game. In the third game, you have fast travel as soon as you get to Firelink. So you're automatically in that same boat. If you have to go back and level up, you can.
Yeah.
It's not really a trek back to a centralized location. First
Yeah.
game, there was no warping until the end.
It occurs to me that I actually have a fifth factor that only applies to me. This is when I threw the pocket sand spell into my stream. So for those of you
You
watching
did that
at
to
home,
yourself.
during my stream, I have with the loyalty points that you can get through Streamlabs by watching me, you can use them to cast spells. And one such spell is the Pocket Sand spell, where if it's cast, if the viewer uses their points to cast it, I have to play the game for 10 seconds with my eyes closed.
It's a very fun spell.
I hate that spell, but I'm not. But people love it, and there's too much popular demand for it, so I can't get rid of it. There's the fifth and final self-imposed challenge.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, if you ever do a Deathless run,
Not
going to happen.
I'll have to turn off that spell.
You will have to get rid of that spell. You'll have to explain to everyone it's for the challenge. We have to do that. Let's do Deathless once, and then you guys can fuck with me for this.
Or I'll have to get good in a way no one's ever gotten good before.
Oh, man.
Bosses.
I want to talk about bosses. Bosses in this game. My very first impression, actually my general impression, I don't think there was a single boss that gave me so hard of a time that I couldn't figure them out. The same way was with the first game. Like, I don't feel like... Now, granted, I did not play the DLC, so I don't know anything about how those were. But as far as the bosses go, I feel like the bosses themselves were relatively easy. They scaled well in difficulty.
Yes.
With the exception of the Sentinels. That is the one boss that I had the hardest time with.
So my experience would be the same, but I think for different reasons, because I did my grindings, because like I said, with my grinding that I did, before I fought the Sentinels, that's another area that I cleared out pretty well, but not quite as well. Mm-hmm. And I killed them so many times that they stopped coming back, and I got a lot of levels from that, and then I could take on the Sentinels because they would die with a couple of heavy soul arrows.
Yeah, but they were fast, man.
Very fast.
And see, for me, I didn't have a single problem with the first Sentinels when it added in the second and the third one that I usually had problems with.
Yeah, and with being a ranged caster, that really helps because, I would just stay on that ledge, kill the first one, and then the second one would come at you before the third one, but even though they would technically come at the same time. And with me being up on the ledge and them being done there, it gave me a chance to shoot out 3 free hits on them. And I would actually kill the second one before the third one even got up there.
Yeah, and at that point, you could probably have dropped down and been perfectly fine to fight him in the main arena.
I did eventually, but the boss that gave me the most trouble, and there might be another one as I think on it more later on, but the first one that I know gave me trouble was what was his name? The lost one, the lost soul,
the lost sinner. Really?
Yes, he gave me a lot of trouble because he's quick.
He is fast, so...
He's one of those people that's really bad for casters because he closes the gap and he attacks fast. And my best spells take a good almost full second to really charge up and cast.
So I remember... Oh, man. I never got to see you fight Lost Sinner. I had a fun time with that one. I got it first try, but then again... Melee character, I'm more geared towards being up close and personal. I've got the gear to be up close and personal.
Another boss that gave me trouble was the Pursuer.
Yeah. Pursuer was pretty difficult because he was fast, and he was another one of those that really you couldn't rely on a shield. You had to rely on dodging. There was a lot more dodging in Dark Souls 2 than there was in Dark Souls 1.
I always rely on dodging to begin with, but with your shield, because also in this game, the shield, even if you have the shield up, you take damage no matter what, right?
It depends on the shield, but there was in the first one, your shield blocked a majority of the damage, if not all of it. This one, shields didn't always block 100% of the damage. Most of them only block 75% until you started getting some of the more specialized shields, like the Dragon Shield or the Crest Shield or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. with the pursuer. I think he gave me the about an equal amount of times trouble as the sinner, in terms of like attempts. Eventually, I got his rhythm down, and when I encountered him in the future, he wasn't so hard.
I just dodged him. I ran around him.
Well,
I actually encountered him later on first, and then somebody was like, "Oh, you haven't fought this guy yet?" And I was like, "No, you can do that? Does that get rid of him?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." It's like, okay. So I went and I found him back in not Undead Settlement, wherever it was in the forest area.
I know I know what you're talking about. Basically at the top of that structure.
Yeah, I found him up there.
There, and I lost.
I found him up there, and I was like, okay, let's just deal with him. So, he was a challenge. I will admit I did not enjoy that battle at all. I died multiple times to him. My worst one was not actually so much it was a bad fight. It had some very depressing moments. So the Iron Giant, it's the big giant Dima in the pool of lava. Man,
yes,
this one feels bad, okay? So I'm fighting this guy. I have him 2 hits, maybe, to go on his life. He had just powered up, or he was about to power up and do an attack. I was getting ready to roll through and dodge, and I backed up and I fell in the lava.
Shit sucks, bro.
That was, I'm like, it broke my heart how much that stuff hurt.
Yeah.
That one was bad.
The worst one, I guess the final worst one would for me would have to be Vendrick, purely because I gave him one attempt and just and noped out of there.
Yeah. Well, I had warned you. I was like, he's got some health on him and he's got some defense. You've got to go and do this side questy stuff to get him, to kill him.
Side quest wasn't working. I couldn't figure it out. I accidentally consumed the giant souls.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It didn't make sense to me. And when
and that was another thing. It didn't make sense what you could do to make him vulnerable.
Yeah, there was really no clear direction on how to do it. I didn't even know he was someone that you could fight at first, because like when I first encountered him, I was casting all my spells and nothing was happening. He wasn't reacting. Yeah. And then you told me like, oh yeah, you can fight him if you keep doing it. I'm like, what, really? And then when I did it, I thought I did it enough times, and I realized, oh shit, we're doing this. And then I cast my spells, and it was like, okay, you've done one out of 100. You've done 1/100th of his damage with your best spell. What are you gonna do next? Freaking kill myself.
We've covered bosses. We covered mechanics. I would like to talk about the layouts of the maps, the enemies, and stuff like that. So
I want to talk about enemies, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's really, that layout of the maps and the enemies go hand in hand to me.
They do, yeah. Since I got pretty familiar with them because I cleared out areas pretty well. They were the layout of the enemies. There's always some enemies that are laid out to just be absolutely terrible for you, and then there's ones that are just they're just there, typical placement of enemies. It was the really carefully placed ones that really got you. Like
very much.
In Hilde's Tower, where there's like 3 giants in there and then a random knight walking around.
Yes.
You can't hit attack one of the knights without pulling the other 2. And then of course the knights tend to they didn't tend to group around together in clusters, but they were always close by the big ones.
Yep. So it was, again, difficult to pull one and defeat it without pulling all the rest.
Yeah. And the Dwarf was the same way, pretty much. Like,
yes.
Fight one, you gotta fight a lot.
So yeah, I mean, I felt enemy placement in this one was a lot more bullshit. Yeah. I feel like they took a lot of the mechanics that worked from the first game, and they threw them out the door and made new mechanics to try to make a new game, and I think it failed.
The first one would throw some dick moves on you like that. There would be like an occasional enemy throwing arrows at you, or shooting arrows at you, and then throwing shit at you. And then they took that to the umpteenth level in this game, and combined the unfairness with, let's hide an enemy behind a wall here.
Yes, or even more so, there's a spot right up at the beginning, in the first forest area. You've got enemy right in front of you. You're like, cool, I see you. You've got enemy over here that's shooting arrows at you, and you're like, cool, I see you. I'm going to go after this one, and then I'm going to go and take care of this one. Make it a quick move, take care of everything super fast. I've got a plan. And so you go and you do it, and then you take care of the melee character. I think he had a sword and a shield, or maybe it's just a sword. You start going after the one with the bow, and then lo and behold, some guy with an axe shows up out of the blue and chops you down, and you're like,
Where'd you come from?
where did this guy come from? And of course, as you play it more and you realize that this is going to happen every time, you look around and you say, he's up on the ledge that's sitting up there, and as soon as I attack this enemy, he drops down. But he's behind me, so I will never see him.
Yeah.
So it's like, that right there was a continual theme throughout the entire game. You go in, you see an enemy, but there's one over there behind you that just crawled up from a ledge. I felt that to be... It was funny at first, but that just added to the negative vibes that I had for the game.
Yeah, because it throws that at you. It throws similar stuff at you constantly throughout the entire game. It takes... I mean, because I've always appreciated that Dark Souls kind of takes the old difficulty from like old 80s and 90s retro games and brings that back in a more modern way, but you can't have that going throughout the entire game. It can't be just straight up Contra or Ninja Gaiden where you jump over this ledge and then suddenly, oh, there's an enemy that just came in on screen and is going to attack you and kill you.
Right, but this is Dark Souls, man. They can do that. It was, to me, it got to be a lot more distracting on the overall game.
Yeah.
And it did affect how much I enjoyed playing.
But then they crank it up there even more by throwing in enemies that you can't lock onto and can't see.
Oh yeah, the invisible ones. Oh god, the fog area. Oh.
That was the ultimate.
Man.
That was the ultimate in I hate everything about this, and I think I'm almost certain I had a harder time with it as a caster because as a melee fighter, we can see their silhouettes, and all you have to do is just get close to them and swing.
Start swinging.
I have to aim at something I can't lock on, and the aim mechanics suck ass.
Yes, well, and they don't make sense either. I had a couple of really awesome aimless throws of grenades or whatever in that game. That was it. For the most part, aiming in that game is trash. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I killed maybe 3 invisible enemies tops before I was like, I'm running through this entire area, no exploration, I'm done. And like I heard, oh well, if you play the DLC, you can get an item that'll help you, that will allow you to lock onto them. And how am I going to get this item? By fighting an invisible boss?
It's like, okay, yeah, well, you did that. That was Priscilla.
Oh yeah,
she was invisible. She's so fluffy.
well, I mean, that was a different case.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm bringing back Dark Souls 1.
The good old times.
The good old times. So, one of the mechanics that I learned in the first game, and it exists in the third game as well, although some of them are a little bit harder to tell because of placement of rubble, mimics.
Yes.
I don't think I actually ran into 2 mimics total this game, but I ran into a lot of chests with traps.
Yeah, a lot more chests with arrows shooting at you, and a thing would pop up and explode in front of you, but that was about it.
Yes.
I think I only encountered 2 mimics, and they're very obvious to find because of the bloodstains.
Yeah, you noticed it pretty quick. Well, I didn't. I didn't have anything to go by.
I actually went mimic hunting because as I was trying to upgrade my equipment, I found out there was a staff that was actually better than my current one because I was using the first staff for a long time, just fully upgraded. And then I realized, if you go to the area where the pigs are, there's like a well that you can jump into that I didn't know that you could jump into, and it leads to a cordoned off house, and there's a mimic in there. And I went mimic hunting, and I just went after that one, and they're tough. They were tough.
They were
I,
pretty tough.
yeah, I mean, I remember it killed me in one hit. I didn't even fall for the trap because I knew it was a mimic, but I fought it, and it was
Yeah.
just it got at me and was like, "You're dead."
But luckily, different mechanics in the first game where if you get hit by a mimic and they fully transform, I believe these guys actually stuck around for another attack.
I was very thankful for that because the first time that because the first game, yeah, it turned into a full mimic and it disappeared after I lost. I'm thankful that the were the skeleton pinwheel ones in this one.
I think there was one spot where you could find him, but I could be wrong on that.
Because those guys give me PTSD, but I don't really remember seeing them in this one.
I know they're in the third one. I know they're in the first one, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they're actually in the second one. Now that I think about it, the bone wheels I don't think are there.
Thankful they weren't there. I think that was like the one saving grace that this game had. That and the I guess they're called basilisks, but they will forever be known as the giant-eyed creepy frogs that are iconic of the game.
Curse frogs.
Curse frogs, yeah.
Curse frogs. They are there. They are there, but curse works differently in this game than it does in the other games. And so curse in the first game instantly kills you and drops your health to half, and you have to use a special item called a purging stone, I think.
Purging stone, or go to the guy in ruins of Londo, whatever.
Yeah, and you have to get that to remove the curse to have full health again.
Yeah, in this game, they just treat it like a regular death, and then your permanent health goes down by a little bit.
Yeah, but it doesn't actually kill you. Like, you don't stop where you're at.
Yeah.
You can continue to fight them. So it's annoying if you're going for like a deathless run. It does count as a death, but still, it's not as inconvenient as the other games.
Yeah.
So, I think that was about it. I don't think there was any kind of super bullshit platforming that had to go on, although there were a couple places, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a place with it was a whole bunch of fire or whatever that you could get into. It was there was some platforming going on there that kind of sucked, depending.
Yeah. They had the big turtle looking guys with swing clubs and samurai knights.
Yeah, and it would destroy some of the platforms, so you'd have to do jump and whatever across. Yeah. But other than that, the game wasn't really too bad. A little bit inside the underground Blighttown 2.0.
Yeah, there was just a lot of people there.
But and, I mean, other than that, as far as the platform. Oh, go ahead.
Also in the final castle, where you have the stone statues that come to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was it's kind of dickery.
And they treat the stone sentinels as just regular enemies instead of bosses.
Oh god, I'm having PTSD now. I thought of a new enemy or a new boss that gave me absolute junk. I hated it. It took me 2 hours to beat. And you did it like flawlessly without any issues, and that's probably because spellcaster. But the Mirror Knight, I believe.
I don't even remember him.
He had a big giant mirror shield, and I think you killed him pretty quick, and you could because spell damage did a lot more than melee damage on him, because he was in heavy armor. If you let him attack you long enough, he summoned like NPC type characters to come and fight you, like NPC invaders to fight you.
Okay, I'm looking at images of him now, and when you say that too, yeah, I remember him. I one-shotted him.
Yeah, you got him the first try, and I'm sitting there like, wow, that's the big difference between sorcerer versus melee. Now, and I should be clear on this. For the majority of the game, for me, and I think for the entire game for you, we didn't use any summons.
No,
like we didn't do the touch the sign or whatever. I did when I got to the end because I was done, and that was the thing, is I was done with the game when we got to the end, and I was like, anything that I can do to make this easier and faster and done with, I'm going to take it. I've got humanity for days, or human effigies for days that I can burn. I'm going to do it. Yeah, call me a cheater if you will. It was at that point. I mean, we talk about like the different stages that you go through in a game. There's a point where you're willing to play it, then you get to the point where it kind of breaks that willingness to play it. Now you just want to beat it, and then it comes down to like there's a whole nother like set of stages you go through until finally you say, I'm putting this down and it's never going to get touched again. I don't care if I beat it. Thankfully, I don't think either one of us we didn't make it to that last stage, but I was getting there. And then I was determined to beat the game, and at that point, it was like everything was gone. I didn't care about anything anymore. Just beat the freaking game.
You and I did the exact same thing. Like we just stopped the game. I Control-Alt-Deleted my way out because I didn't care anymore.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I let the credits run. I think I skipped past them, and then on stream, I gracefully deleted it on stream.
I did too.
And I made sure everybody saw exactly what happened and saw me deleting it. And I even took a clip of it.
So are there any other points to bring up?
None really. Here's a question. Overall, would you play it again?
I've played games for a long time, and one thing I've learned is I always come back to them no matter what. Even the ones that I didn't have the best time with, I will touch again at some point. This game, even though it broke me in some ways, I had a frustrating time with a lot of it, and Pocket Sand also didn't help. I will touch it again at some point. I will probably give it a fair shot, beat it on my own time, take my time with it, maybe kill literally every enemy until they all stop coming back, and then try the DLC.
Yeah. Well, I tried some of the DLC. I didn't get to any bosses. I'm gonna just say you didn't miss much. So just more bullshit.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if I want to do it with the third one, but you know, I'll give it an attempt before I finish it.
So same question for me. I have considered it. I have considered playing it again. Again, despite how much I hate and have hated the game, I have considered picking it up, playing it off stream. I'm not going to put it on stream. And seeing how I do. What I would like to do, because, one of the backseaters, like, you were blessed. For some reason, I got backseated like crazy.
Yeah, I didn't get that very much.
Yeah, I had people coming in all over the place telling me how to play the game. And one of the guys I had was like, yeah, this is a really complex game. There's really a way you have to build your character for it to work out well. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry I didn't build my character to your specifications. But it being the case, I would actually be interested in seeing what are the benefits to following maybe a guide or following just a leveling guide in general to say, here's my targets for where I want to be in these different areas and the levels of the different skills to see how that changes the game. Because it's Dark Souls, right? It is it's an RPG where you are free to create your character however you want to.
With even more freedom than the first one.
Yeah, and so you get to boost these stats however you want to. And the question is was there a better way to boost the stats to get a better result? And I think there was.
100%.
And given that foreknowledge, or given that hindknowledge, whatever, hindsight, given that, I think I could play it again and have a different take on it, and maybe actually enjoy it in a second run.
I'm sure of that because, you were told to do a strength build in the beginning, and for one reason or another, I think that if the people. I don't know if the people telling him to do that were like longtime viewers or not, but if they
It was
weren't,
the same person who gifted you the game.
maybe he just likes to watch us suffer. Because it doesn't
I
seem,
I know who gifted you the game.
yeah, because it doesn't seem like strength was the best build for this kind of game. Because when it comes to the PvP aspect, because I feel like with the PvP aspect, you can go through the PvE just as well with that kind of build. And I noticed a common theme was everybody was quick, or they had a certain way of honing their spells. Because I came across a few spellcasters, and almost every single one of them was using hexes instead of just straight up sorcery.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things I want to dig into is they have a dark side. They have the hexes, or hex magic, dark magic.
Yeah.
And I have heard that for some reason in that game that is even more broken than sorcerer OP.
That's what I heard. I mean, I saw some of the spells, and I mean, I couldn't really use them, but when I saw them used, I was like, they don't seem like they're terribly useful. I mean, Soul Arrow, it just goes at your enemy. It's a straight up hit. Then, this one is even stronger. This one creates a bunch of homing Soul Arrows on you. There's a homing Soul Arrow I can fire. It just seemed like a good direct attacking build. The other ones had more variety to them, and I wasn't quite sure about them.
Yeah, so I'm interested in that. I'm also interested in doing something where it's like a faith build, where you can use miracles or you can use stuff to boost your own weapons.
I'm for sure interested in that as well.
I've actually heard that is a great way to play the third game as well. That's really all I have. I mean, I think we covered all the basics, right? We covered all the basics and more. Our thoughts on the game are, would we play it again? The bosses, the mechanics changes, everything.
I'd play it again. Yeah, I'd play it again with a walkthrough for sure. Because I can tell that there was a lot of hidden stuff too. Because I didn't really interact with the NPCs that much. And,
quests, side quests.
There was a whole mechanic where you could change your gender, and apparently that's used for something. You didn't find that?
I didn't.
Oh, it was back in Things Betwixt. If you use a petrified branch of the
yeah. Well, yeah, you could, there's ways you could restat your character too, and I had no clue how to do it. I was actually wanting to do that because I realized I had messed my stats up, as you almost always do when you hit close to the end of the game. You go, shit, I really needed to boost this stat instead.
And also another thing I found was that just another hidden thing that I found pretty interesting. That lady, the faith lady that changes the path for you from the Hilde Tower to the other area.
Yep, the forest or whatever. I know what you're talking about.
Did you know she was a bad one? She's a bad character.
Really? No.
So I went back in there close to the end of the game, and it said I had this item. I didn't even know I had your cracked eye is resonating in this room, and I wasn't sure what it meant. So I went and I used the eye, and then it treated her like a player that wanted to kill me.
But yeah, so I think long term I would probably replay it, much to the disdain of my community. A lot of them were like, we have a joke. There's a certain game on our channel that we do not mention.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there when it's been mentioned, and I hear that joke.
Oh, and that was another thing. So one last thing to toss in here. Differences. So again, I play with a controller because I'm on PlayStation. You play on keyboard. One of the frustrating points that I know you had was
okay, yes. Thank you for reminding me about this one.
PTSD time! Yay!
For those of you at home, Dark Souls is a console game. It's a console game, and that's not the biggest deal when you port console games over to a PC. The problem with Dark Souls is they don't reconfigure the helpful hints that usually tell on a console it says push A to do this, push X to do this, push triangle to do this, and it makes sense. The buttons are on the controller. The helpful hints don't change when the game gets ported. It still tells me to push A to do this, and it tells me to push the controller buttons for the keyboard. So I have to either just do a lot of random guessing, or I have to go into the input configuration and figure it out myself. And some of the inputs are different from the first game, which makes things even harder. And then, in the third game, went back to the controls of the first game, so I have to relearn them again. Okay. It's
PTSD over. Okay.
Dark Souls 2, fantastic game. 5 out of
Sucks.
10. Don't come back for me. I'll play it again. I'll give it a chance.
I will too. What would be fun is for me to get it on PC and do co-op.
Yes.
I have found that these games doing co-op are a lot of fun. A lot more fun when you get two people who know what they're doing, and playing it for fun rather than to play it for the first time.
All right, so I think that's it for this retrospective, unless you got any final points.
Nope, I think that's about it. The game sucks. It's really horrible, but you should still probably play it so you can feel our pain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give it a straight 5 out of 10.
Yeah. The game, I agree. 5 out of 10. We'll play it again, but just for fun and with a guide. I wouldn't play it blind again or whatever, trying to play it blind again.
Yeah.
Never.
All right, well, thank you for joining us for the second retrospective for Dark Souls 2. Come back again for Dark Souls 3.
In a month or two?
Yeah, I will probably be done with Dark Souls 3 before the end of the month, and that's in 8 days.
Yeah, and I've got 3 more bosses technically, but they're the hardest bosses in the game, so... Yeah. Anyway, I'm SyloKat.
I'm Kadash.
And this was a retrospective on Dark Souls 2.
Good night, everybody.